Don't move. Don't move this dial. Whatever you're doing, I want you to keep doing it. So actually, if you're going for a walk, I guess keep moving, but don't change this station. You're going to want to hear this, and you're going to want to hear what is the number one fastest way that women in menopause trash their immune system. We don't get to it until probably one of the last 5 to 10 minutes of this episode. So if you're really impatient, you're going to get there no matter what. You're going to want to go, but you don't want to miss it. I promise you. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, and I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset. Sometimes about what to eat, how to move, so you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And this episode is, we're releasing right around the period of time when we're in a 2-year anniversary. And I didn't say celebrating, notice, of the pandemic. So menopause and immunity, what do they have in common? What affects one that impacts the other, and what can you do about it? Is it just a given, or is there more to it than that? We're going to break them each apart, and then we're going to pull them together. We're going to talk about the integration that we so often talk about, but I will tell you, my guest today really breaks it down and gives so many great analogies that if you've struggled before to really grasp some of the terms we've talked about and why your exercise may be making you fat, this episode is one to listen to. And before we get started, this episode is brought to you by the Flipping 50 5-Day Flip. If you need to start or restart exercise, and you need to do it in a way that does not trash your hormones or immunity, the 5-Day Flip is just 5 very short videos you can do from the comfort of your home, as I'm doing them in the comfort of mine on the video with you. You will also understand in a short audio every day how that is tied to your hormones. So you can make the connection of why these changes that may feel a little foreign compared to the exercise you used to do could be more beneficial for the moment in time that you're in. All right, I can't wait to introduce you. Dr. Patrick Flynn is the founder of the Wellness Way Clinics. In his youth, he experienced a series of events that led him to discover immune and neurological issues. This discovery prompted Dr. Flynn to begin his health journey, define his life purpose, and initiated the pursuit of his education. It ultimately led him to his dynamic career, where he has created a totally different approach to healthcare. He's got a long list of prestigious educational institutions, including, shout out to Iowa, Palmer College of Chiropractic, National Health Sciences, and the Harvard Medical School HMX Fundamentals Online Certificate Program in Immunology, where he honed his focus on hormones and the immune system. Dr. Flynn is the best-selling author of the book I Disagree. His wildly popular public seminar, The Hormone Connection, has been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people. He's trained thousands of doctors, and his network is now comprised over 80 clinics around the world. Dr. Flynn, thanks so much for joining me.
I am so thankful to be on this wonderful podcast today. Thank you.
All right. And this is such a hot topic, hot pun intended, given that we're talking both menopause and, your immune system, your immunity. Like, we're approaching this moment where right at release, this is going to be about 2 years, just a little over us all being experts in a pandemic we didn't know we signed up to be experts on, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about right away the nitty gritty. If we're talking menopause and immunity, is there a connection, and how strong is that connection?
It's actually probably one of the biggest connections that women are not taught. And because we think about hormones, we're thinking, well, there's a hormonal issue. Well, if you think about menopause in general, it's let's start here. A lot of people, I always say to people, because menopause is actually in the medical world actually treated with like a disease. They even have diagnoses for it. And I would say, when I'm speaking in front of a crowd, I say, listen, men have basically one stage of life. They have puberty, and they stay that way all the way till they die. Women have an extra stage of life because they have puberty. They go through cyclic years, and then they get the menopause years. And I say, ladies, how do you get to be in menopause? And no one answers. They say, all you have to do is live long enough.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about that is this: menopause is a beautiful stage of life. And I'm going to prove to you today, and I've dealt with female hormones, it's my specialty for such a long time, that it's actually easier to keep a woman healthier in menopause than it actually is when they're cycles. And people say, well, how is that possible? There's so many conditions, diseases. Well, yes, because there's a cascade of things that happen when you're in cyclic years. And now in your menopause, if it's not good, if it wasn't good in cyclic, it's going to be even horrible in menopause. But if you understand how this all connects and works, menopause can be the most vital. That's why it's called the golden years. And I always tell people, I said, ladies, just remember this: the term cougar did not come from a cyclic woman.
Very good. Okay.
And but you say, but doc, but you see sick menopausal women, and you have clinics, and no joking, we've taken care of hundreds of thousands of menopausal women and with their hormones. But here's the part where, and this is where I want to get in depth today. I want you to think about your body, and I'm going to give you a different perspective on the body, but it's all physiology and biochemistry based. You have to think of your body like a Swiss watch. There are a bunch of gears that all work together. And for example, if I were to ask I'm going to give you a simple anatomy lesson right here, that people don't realize that your big toe controls your heart. And people are like, what? That makes no sense. Well, really? I'm going to step on your big toe hard. What happens to your heart rate? There you go. It increases. Your blood pressure goes up. Your stress hormones go up. Your brain chemistry changes. Actually, their blood flow changes just from a simple stress on the toe. Okay. Now here's what happens. If my blood pressure goes up, should I run and take a bunch of medication for it? Should I run and take a bunch of supplements for it? Or should you get off the darn toe? Okay. Now, I know it seems like a simple analogy, but there's going to be a million people that walk in the doctor with blood pressure today, and they never found the stress that did that. Well, here's what happens. The immune system can be such a stressor to the physical body that actually can throw the hormonal system off. It's why even with COVID, you saw women's cycles change. It's why we see the vaccine. It's actually affecting women's cycle to bleed more and different things like that. And so we're going to get into the fact that think of it, the reason why there's such a deep connection is because it's so easy to trigger your immune system from multiple things, which now has a Swiss watch kind of effect on the hormonal system, that you can actually make menopause, cycle, or any hormonal issue worse by having an immune issue.
Yeah, great concepts. Okay, so let's give everybody a quick win. What could a menopause woman do to boost her immune system?
It can't boost your immune system. Now, let me explain. As you're going to find out, I have a lot of different perspectives on this. There's nothing you can take that actually boosts your immune system.
Nobody said take anything.
Well, here's what happens. You think this way. If you're deficient, you're going to be able to need to do something. Okay. And you might have to take something. But people don't realize the boost. You first got to know if a person's immune system is good in the first place. So it's got to be tested. But if you're deficient in certain immune cells, yes, there's things you can take and things like that, but you got to find out what's really causing that to go low. And for example, if we look at even like the aspect of shingles, number one reason why menopausal women actually break out in shingles is actually a form of mental stress. And I believe clinically, and this is my own opinion, I believe I have enough stats to prove this, that one of the most suppressive things that affect a woman, especially menopause, their immune system and also their hormonal system is mental stress. Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying to get women to understand that be careful on the mental stress. So a nugget I'd take away is just by women even reducing their mental stress, they're going to actually see a better immune response and a better hormonal response.
Okay, let's unpack that, because I love that. It's so very true.
Yep.
And yet women are often told, this is like in the doctor's office, and I'm sure not yours, right? But they're told start exercise, or they're told generically reduce your stress, and then they leave. And they don't really get any, what's my GPS? Where do I go? How do I do that?
Yep. Well, if you think this way, what I'm always going to come from a standpoint of I'm a big lab person. I want objective findings that I can find on any individual that's going to lead me to give a plan of care for them. Okay. So therefore, if you look at this, if you look at what a doctor should really be doing is checking all the things that are stressing a woman's body. And they're wrong. I can measure their cortisol levels, and I can give you a perfect example of a 60-year-old woman that changed my life. When I was actually, we did our hormone panel. Yes. 6 out of her 10 estrogens were deficient. Now we can get into that point in just a little bit. But then what happened is I saw her cortisol rhythm, and her cortisol was high in the morning, cortisol high at lunchtime, and then it was depleted at night. And she wonders why she crashed in the afternoon. And what happened was this. I found those inflammatory things because inflammatory things are a stress to the body. And what I realized that her two major things that were triggering her immune system were her foods and then the mental loss of her husband. And the minute that I looked at her, I said, listen, I can see by your objective findings, your cortisol is extremely high. There's something that you're stressed out about. And no joke, she looked at me and she said, my kids, my husband died 2 years ago. My kids are telling me to move on and I don't want to move on and I don't even want to see them. And I said to him, I said to her, I said, listen, I get that. And your husband was probably a wonderful man. And because I met her after her husband passed. And I said, here's what happens though. But the mental stress is destroying your body. And it was interesting because I was taking care of her for about 2 months before that. And I wasn't seeing anything change on her hormonally. Vaginal dryness was still there. All things were going on that way. And I was giving her great things to take and rebuild her body. But the mental stress was so ecstatically high on her that it was overriding all that things. And that's when I realized that you can do a lot of good things and those stressors will deplete your body and actually keep you in a state. And I believe that mental stress has been the most. Now, you say, well, wait, she also had some other things go on. Yeah, anything that creates inflammation is a stress to the body, throws off all the hormonal system. It'll deplete your progesterone. It'll throw your estrogen off that way. It'll throw your cortisol off. It'll throw your blood sugar off. And what happened is she had some other things going on that we approached. But then we put all that package together of removing those stressors and then giving her and doing things with her to build her body. Vaginal dryness went away. Her osteoporosis started to actually come down. Her scans got better and better. And it continues to go from there.
So good. Yeah. Great example as well. All right. So menopause happens at a certain age. You already asked, how do you reach menopause? How do you get that gold medal? Well, you live certain age and you will ultimately not get to 90 without having gone through it.
Yes.
But the question is age or does age have to dictate how well your immune system works? And I think this is a good question because older research will say yes. What's the answer to that?
Well, got to remember, age is not a plain factor. And I know if you ever look at PubMed or Mayo Clinic, any condition, they always list age as the number one cause. Mm-hmm. Well, do you know why? Because here's what happens. So people come to me and let's take a male hormone perspective because I get to ask to speak at big medical conferences, medical schools, natural conferences, chiropractic schools, everything like that. And I was at a conference late 3 months ago in Iowa. And all of a sudden, doctors sitting around, pediatricians up front and everything. And I'm speaking about this kind of stuff. And I said, just in general, if we look at the statistics, when a young man hits puberty, 13, 14, 15 years old, how high is his testosterone stay and when does it start to decrease? They said, well, it starts to decrease after 25, but after 40, it starts to drop about 6% every single year. And I looked at that doctor and speaking to a big crowd. I said, yes, if they're under your care. And the reason why is this, I said, because you know something, actually Saturday on my show, I'm going to have a guy that was actually in his 37 when I met him. And no joke, he's been doing all the good things and rebuilding stuff back up. And his testosterone was 200. And now he's at 848 as of a couple of days ago. And no, once again, that's pretty common. It happens in our clinics and stuff like that. And here's what happens. He's not taking bioidenticals, not taking, hormone replacement therapy. We actually found out what was causing his hormones to go low and start rebuilding back to normal. And of course, then it's normal for them to be that way. Well, that happens with anything. See, people don't realize the reason why people's immune systems are bad because the current care you're under doesn't dictate you to how to take care of it or even know if it's bad in the first place. I'm saying get it tested. Then you can actually know where it's coming from, what you can do, and build it back to keep it normal. And we're not boosting it. We're actually making things normal. That's what your body's trying to be. And menopause is trying to be normal. And cycling years trying to be normal. It doesn't matter. Your body's genetically programmed for normal. You are not genetically programmed for breast cancer.
Yeah, so good. So good. And our audience is no stranger to test, not guess. And many of the people in our programs know that's kind of, we look at it like this, Dr. Flynn, that we do make all the lifestyle changes. Yep. And if that doesn't get you where you want to go, then we look at what do you need to do next, right? To feel the best. So let's talk a little bit about the loss of hormones that, a woman may begin to have happen in her 40s, may not hit her hard enough for her to understand it because she's climbing the corporate ladder, she's driving the kids around to practice, and then finally she looks up and she's like, whoa, this happened. When did this happen, right? So it at some point hits us, whether it's energy or sleep, or it's weight gain, weight loss resistance. But how does that loss of hormones impact the immune system? Or I think we've got to say this, and I love it, and love it that you're on the same page if you don't do anything about it.
Yeah, well, I want you to think of this. If we and we know this, I guarantee you have covered this a lot, but I want you to think about this: is a hormonal system is nothing more than a messenger system. So I want you to imagine that, let's say you run a company and you have 400 employees, and the messages are disrupted. There's going to be chaos, okay? And that's important to know, because the chaos that happens is you're trying to run all of the organs of the body based on bad messages. It's going to be a bad day, okay? Now, here's what I want people to understand. There's major connections between all the systems. That's why I call it the Swiss watch principle. All these gears are working together. But here's the one thing that I think is the most important. If you look at stress in general, and there's multiple stressors. For example, like I said, I gave you a physical stressor like stepping on your toe. That will change your hormonal system. But also there's chemical stressors and there's mental stressors. And in my clinical experience, I speak at the biggest things in the world on this, and I believe, and no one has ever proved me wrong on this yet. I still believe that mental stressors will deplete a woman's hormones faster than ever. Now people say, Doc, how is that possible? Well, if you look at this, if you look at the significance where it's very different for males, if we just look at the cascade of how hormones are produced, you actually just need some brain stimulation and some ingredients for the organs to actually produce hormones, mainly cholesterol, especially those are fat-based hormones. And then obviously to get more estrogens, you need to convert them in your liver, and that's why they're called metabolites and everything. But I want you to think about this, is when a hormone is produced, it can convert to other forms. And if you look at the stress hormone that everybody has, both men and women, is cortisol. Cortisol now actually can be derived from progesterone. So high stress and high cortisol levels will now go after your progesterone and deplete it. Well, for me, that's okay. You say, for my wife or any other female, that's devastating, because no matter how old you are, progesterone is still that balancing hormone to all of your estrogens. You need it. Do you need less as you get older? Absolutely. But you still need it. And most women, I can honestly tell you, very few women in my clinic practice ever, by the time they got here, actually had normal progesterone levels, because the stressors so depleted their hormones that now, and that's why if you look, people realize, do you understand that the medical field, even the natural field, has demonized estrogens? Like, really, it's the main hormones that actually make women who they are. It doesn't mean now all the rest of them don't contribute. But think about this. The majority of breast cancer is happening postmenopausal. You have the smallest amount of estrogen levels you had your whole life so far. So, but here's what happens. You can actually have normal estrogen levels and your progesterone depletes. And guess what happens? You can end up with a lot of problems, because by your body's state, there's no balance to what's going on with your estrogens. So to your body, it seems like estrogen's high because your progesterone is so depleted. So that constant stress. Now, Darling, you say, Doc, but if I eat bad, I can stress out my body. Yep. If I have mental stress, if I actually have physical stress, if I eat bad food or chemicals. So you're talking about all those lifestyle things. That's why women just in general, by doing some good things, will actually see more balanced hormones. Now, I believe because of all the stressors going on, they need to be tested properly and things like that, and really led for them to give good guidance for the individual things. But even just start with good, simple things. And I say, listen, women, if we can at least get the mental stress under control, you're a step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about unpacking the try a few good things, because there are a lot of listeners who are in their 40s, definitely those of you in your 50s, because I get you, and those of you in your 60s entering 70s that learned something that was healthy
Yep.
in their 20s that really has been replaced by better science, and yet that is still what they default to. So there's a little pull push here. They think they're doing the right things, and yet that's still backfiring. How often do you see that?
A lot.
Yeah.
You say, because what happens, and this is my personal opinion, remember, I'm not going to say it's fact, but I want a personal opinion. People, especially women, are told a lot of bad information when it comes to their health. Mm-hmm. And like, for example, soy is good. No, ladies, soy is not good. Mm-hmm. Nutrition is my major background. It's not good. I was told it was even good in my education. and going through college, but also they were actually pharmaceutically and soy funded for their books. It's like why people think high fructose corn syrup is good for them. No, it's
Mhm.
not. And there's actually things that are actually very devastating for the ovaries that you got to stay away from, even food wise. Otherwise, guess what? It can actually change the cycle. And on top of it, if it stresses out your body, ladies, I think that's the biggest thing that people realize, that ladies still produce a nice chunk of hormone in menopause, but it's not produced by the same things. Your ovaries do, and the egg development drops dramatically. And what happens is this: so your adrenals have to kick in, and your adipose tissue does. And if your adrenals are tanked out because of stress, it's why women don't have to change anything when they transition menopause. And if they're all stressed out, their body says, well, I got another tissue I can produce hormone from, and that's called fat tissue. They start to actually gain fat with doing nothing different besides just transitioning to a different phase.
You just spoke to a whole lot of women
I
out
know.
there. Yep.
So it was my whole career. I'm like, Doc, I transitioned and I gained weight, didn't do anything. I said, I understand. I said, but here's what happens. The major organ that was supposed to compensate for the loss of the ovaries is all tired, fatigued. And so the body says, I got to produce some hormone. I got to live and survive. So guess what? I can produce fat tissue myself, and you can eat right and exercise and do everything great. And you're still gaining weight because your body's going to do what it needs to do.
Love that. Okay. And I also want to capitalize on what specifically many of the women come here for.
Yeah.
They end up getting more, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And getting the, we got to unpack this because this is
Yes.
an integrated process. We're not going
Yep.
to exercise in a silo. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. But they're also exercising and thinking I'm exercising and I'm moving more and it's still not working. And that may be actually a why it's not working, because your body right now needs more rest and recovery.
Yep. Well, I want you to think of this. And we're going to go back to the cyclical years, because you have to understand cyclical years to even understand menopausal years. If you look at if a young lady or a woman exercises during the whole type of her month, she could actually make herself very sick and very stressed out and actually even obese. Now,
Mhm.
here's what happens this. Now, once again, let's come back to this. If we look at the production of hormones for a woman in menopause, obviously it transitions, like I said, from the ovaries over to the adrenals. So it's about 60, 30, 10, 60 being ovaries, 30 being about adrenals, and 10 when you're cyclic. When you actually move over to menopause, it's basically, listen, the adrenals and a couple other tissues and the fat tissue make hormone. And so therefore, guess what? I want you to think about this: is as it happens to a person, um, and you transition and your adrenals are very weak, okay, and you're exercising and stressing those out even more, and not supporting the adrenals to actually be able to keep up to your activity. Just like if a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old is a swimmer and she's hitting her body hard, not getting her adrenals to adapt, she can skip or delay her cycle. Well, you start exercising too much in menopause and trying to get rid of that fat that you gained, or even trying to do that way, you're going to actually stress out your adrenals more, and your body goes, well, I'm more stressed out. I'm actually going to just kick on some more fat. And that's why women go, Doc, I'm gaining weight in exercise. I'm just quitting. I'm like, no. We got to actually get you to a state where your cortisol and your stress hormones are actually back to normal. Now go do the exercise and support the body. Now people say, Doc, what you can support it with? Well, women use progesterone creams like crazy. Use actually some yams, use some ashwagandha, use some Romania, use some things. Once you get tested, you can figure out what you need exactly. That can actually support those organs. So now you get the most benefit of your exercise, no matter if you're cyclic or menopausal.
Yeah, that was so good and so much clarity right there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the mic drop.
Oh,
So
thank you.
if you're out there, you're walking, I want you to stop, rewind about 4 minutes, listen to that again, because that is the number one tenet of Flipping 50, restore before more. But we just gave you the science. He gave you an analogy to understand, why am I gaining fat? And it's not that you're doing it wrong.
No.
It's that nobody gave you the tools before to read the signs that you're getting to know, oh, need to pivot, need to do a U-turn. Siri's saying it every day. You can do it too.
Yep.
Love it. All
Awesome.
right. Let's do this. So let's turn the tables and say, okay, because we're talking about doing some of the right things, let's talk about just some explicit, more or additional examples of a woman not taking care of her hormones. Because what we want her to do is take care of them so her immune system is buff. What would be examples of a woman not taking care of her hormones? And let's say unintentionally.
Um, Number one, this is going to sound interesting. Number one, sleep by
Yeah.
far. Now, let me explain. Let's go back to those adrenals, ladies. If you look at the normal hormonal circadian rhythm of both men and women, your adrenals start to actually build up reserves from what it used all day. And it starts about 9 o'clock and it ends about 1 a.m. And that's why cortisol starts to creep its way up about 3 a.m., which now gets you up and gets you going. But here's what I want you to think about is that's why if you actually do this, if you go to bed at between 9 and 10 and sleep 8 hours, or go to bed at midnight and then sleep 8 hours, do you understand you feel more rested between 9 and 10, or between 9 and 10 compared to midnight because you gave your body and didn't start draining your hormones at 9 o'clock p.m. Okay. So that's why I say sleep is the most important. I encourage women. I have a beautiful wife and 4 daughters. They're in bed every night between 9 and 10. And because you know why? I want them to build up those hormone reserves to kick butt the next day. And I always say, ladies, that doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you anything. Okay. And I know, ladies, I get it. You got your brain going 100 miles an hour and there's so much you want to accomplish and things like that. But I got to give you advice that makes you vibrant and healthy and going like crazy. I know it's not always convenient. Second of all, is a lot of people still fall in the realm, and this is a difficult one, of thinking, I know it's a little tough because food's such an emotional thing.
Mm.
But here's what happens with this. They're unknowingly beating themselves up. And what I mean by that is this, is if you ever picture a stressed out woman and they go, Doc, my kid's driving nuts, my husband's just being terrible to me and work sucks. I just crave an organic salad. No, they don't crave an organic salad. Yeah,
It's never
exactly.
kale or salmon either. Yeah.
Exactly. What they do is they crave sugar, but sugar converts and causes your upper level stress hormones to convert to estrogens, which can really be damaging sometimes. And so we got to start really watching the consumption of sugar with women. And that means fruits and everything included. And it's really because it can accelerate the conversion of hormones in a direction you don't want to happen. So, well, Doc, I'm a vegan. I'm a little scared about that because you're eating, even unless you're really eating green vegetables all day, but a lot of vegans eat a lot of fruit. I'm going, be careful because your
Mm-hmm.
hormone conversions happen a lot within your liver. And you get even if your adrenals produce or your ovaries produce your forms of estrogen, they have to be converted in your liver to certain metabolites. A fatty liver actually converts women's or blocks the changes in the conversion of women. That's why their metabolites and labs are bad. Or if a woman is doing things toxic, so they eat bad that actually have chemicals and stuff in it, and there's that stress again. So it's just like you said at the beginning, there's major lifestyle things that you can see massive change in by just making a couple things that are different. Now, I'm such a scientist where I'm like, I don't like to tell anybody anything unless I have a good lab in front of me, because then I could give them direct information for themselves. But even that, just by saying, hey, listen, there's chemical stressors, clear up your food. There's physical stressors, guys. There's great things from chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, yoga, all the things that you can physically relieve stress from your body that are important. That's like I said, talk about stepping on your toe. Your hormones will be drained and thrown off. You got the physical, the chemical, but of course, I'm always going to come back from my clinical experience, and I've looked at over 100,000 plus labs in my career already, in over 20 years. That the mental stress just destroys women.
Yeah, so glad you said that. We carry it, we think about it so much differently and so much more often.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on meditation?
Well, I think it's essential.
Mm.
We're just there because it's going to help you with massive mental stress. Because here's what happens: unless I throw a pebble in your shoe, if I step on your toe, I'm going to be off in 2 seconds. If I throw a pebble in your shoe all day, you're going to walk around. Your attitude's going to be horrible at the end of the night. And your hormones will be off like crazy. But here's what I want you to think of it this way: at least meditation is a controlled aspect of calming that fight or flight response down. So I'm a huge fan of it.
Great. Fantastic. And we've been talking about meditation since the beginning of the year, actually,
Good.
since prior to it. And I think it's a tough practice for those women who've been always in motion,
Yeah.
in action, but so good.
Well, can I say something really quick and add on that?
Please.
So when that 6-year-old woman had major high cortisol levels, now I'm just going to give you an opinion. So let me say this is opinion because I have no data on this, but I think I've had enough experience because the hundreds of thousands of women I've dealt with in my career, literally. I want you to think about this. When I had that lab in front of that 6-year-old woman. I said, listen, your husband is probably absolutely amazing. But I'm telling you right now, the mental stress is hurting your body. I realized that I saw a faster clinical change after I told her that. And what I realized is that if women can connect the unknown to the known, they'll make the change. If they knew that if their cortisol levels were so high and mental stress killed them, and I'm like, listen, we need to do something. Here's a factor that makes unknown to known now. We know this is a factor. They do it more. They really do. And
Yeah.
so I think you'll get them to follow through in the meditation more if you can connect it to a physiological reason to why they need it so much.
Yeah, I love that. And this is definitely so those listeners who are here who are really in my community, if you're a Flipping 50 member or you're taking one of the courses or have, what I've learned is they need to know and want to know the why. And
Yes.
then when they do, they're invested in doing and following through on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and their actions are actually everybody needs a reason to do something. And if I just say meditation is good, well, if it
Mhm.
doesn't connect to them,
Mhm.
they're like, okay, it's good. But then we realize that, oh my goodness, I have a problem. And now I'm bringing the unknown to the known. This can actually contribute to actually helping my problem resolve. I think most people would do it.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. So I asked you, what does it look like when a woman's not taking care of her hormones? What if I asked you this? What are the fastest ways to trash your immune system? Is it
Oh,
the same or
you,
something else?
I think you don't want to ask me that question. Number one right now, and I've had to deal with it. And I said, is I just bring this up so people know that um, I'm just not a one person practitioner. I have hundreds of doctors of all kinds. From nurse practitioners and nurses to everything that way. And I can tell you right now, the number one thing trashing women right now is the COVID vaccine
Mm.
because
Oh,
it triggers an inflammatory response. And the nanoparticle, actually, even by Pfizer's study that they hid until the Liberty conference got it out of them legally, is it's conglomerating to the fat-based organs. And that's why you're seeing women bleed post-vaccine, be around vaccinated people, things like that. It's such a devastation to their immune system that's causing major problems. So that's why the immune system is so key to hormones, because if you eat something bad, like for example, my world, how I became a doc was based on I have an egg allergy that can kill me. It's an immune response. And if you look at the immune system, any inflammatory response will actually devastate a menopausal woman hormones, because obviously their cortisol turns into cortisone, which actually needs more inflammatory things. And that's where guys do. Our guys are more affected by inflammation too. They're not affected by mental stress. Girls actually, for example, have that cortisone aspect too. So they're going to actually deplete their hormones even from there. So I'm just telling you currently right now, it's been devastating, especially being so specialized in hormones, watching this happen. But anything inflammatory. So any structural stress, you have a broken toe, they'll do it. You have a bad spine, any chemical stress, you eat bad food, you eat chemical food, that's inflammatory. Your body doesn't know moderation. It knows, is it inflammatory or is it self-restoring and rebuilding? It's not. There's no moderation. That's an emotional excuse to eat something wrong. I define that. Moderation is nothing more than your emotional excuse for wanting to eat something wrong. That's it. So right now, I just currently see in all of our clinical offices right now, we're seeing more hormonal problems based off of after the vaccine.
boy. Okay, we've just had a lot of mic drops all day long, every day.
Okay.
Love it, love it. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, this has been a wealth of information, and you can hear it in your voice, your conviction and your passion to getting this message to the right women. Is
Yes.
there a question, Dr. Flynn, that I should have asked you? I did not.
No, you were fantastic and every great question.
Well, then I have one more for you.
Okay.
And listeners are going to want to know the answer to where do they get more Dr. Flynn?
Actually, like I said, thewellnessway.com and stuff, because I just like you, I just like to put out good information. And I built my whole career on just putting good doctors and nurses out there like crazy. And doctors of all forms, no joke. You can go to a clinic and have a nurse practitioner and a chiropractor. You have all the stuff trying to remove all those stressors that are there. And I put a lot of videos out. Right now, I'm blocked on YouTube and Facebook because obviously, I guess I'm controversial.
Of
And
course.
but otherwise, the Wellness Way Facebook page, Wellness Way YouTube page, Dr. Patrick Flynn when it's actually active, and all I'm doing is just trying to, just like this, make some sense. And where I thrive in is I've just said I can test people better than anybody because I believe I've done it differently for 23 plus years. And that's why people have actually done that. So just want to see people get tested so they know exactly what to do with their body.
I appreciate that. And so in these times, I also want to ask you, somebody's listening in Timbuktu and you're in Green Bay. Can they work with you?
Yeah, well, they can work with people. I personally, I know it sounds funny. I've been a practicing clinician for 23 years. I have not taken a new patient in a long time because my whole career is based on fertility. So the only people I really take care of right now are some patients that I've been seeing for 10 plus years. But here's what happens. But there's doctors all over the United States. You go to wellnessway.com, look for a location. They're there. Everything I'm talking about is second nature to every one of my practitioners. This is our world. You say, and I know it sounds funny. I actually get to speak on all stages from natural medical on female hormones. And when I get up there, it's kind of funny. I'm like, if people knew my story, how I even developed all this, it was from my beautiful wife who actually told she'd never have kids. And now we have 4 beautiful daughters. But all those kind of principles I just told you were applied to her. And she was seeing doctors way before me. And she was very sick when I met her at 23 years old. And they almost took her uterus out and everything before that. And Durham, and I understand what they were looking at, but they had a different perspective than I did. And I just came up with a different way of actually leading women to a very good way of cyclic health and also menopausal health based on some of the principles I taught you today. And obviously you can only cover so much in a show, but something that's really factor in where it actually can affect every woman on the planet.
So good. What a happy ending. All right, listeners, now it's your turn. Is there a question that you wished I would have asked Dr. Flynn? And I highly recommend this is one you listen to again. It's like that good book. You got a lot during the first pass. I guarantee you, you're going to get more during the second one. So you're going to find the show notes at flipping50.com/menopause and immunity. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.